For networking. I'm sure I'm gonna be getting up on that.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
How are you?
We're fine, sir.
Hey, I'm just giving the others an opportunity to settle in before we begin. So I guess you can take a moment or two and stretch and settle in. We'll be starting very shortly. That's fine. Go ahead and do that. But there may be a thing you want to that you know the last session and all that stuff. But I get back to you sometime between now and Saturday. But go ahead and look at the video first. Okay? If you don't have something by Saturday night, probably not have a text you say, excuse me, and then I'll update you. Yeah, yes, then there's a grade. When you think about this, you'll find it today. I was just reading the parents, since I looked at one, so I'll be sending them out tomorrow. Not to worry, I'm not looking at that. But just from memory, I don't think so. That's okay. You can try that tomorrow. And remember, the weekend will be on the semester. So I'll be final, plus your other stuff. Okay, so don't worry too much. Okay. Take care. Okay, let's get started. The others will have to join us if they're going to join us. Let me just do my register first. Joseph Adelaide, are you there? Still muted.
Yes, sir.
Ah, there you are. I'm just marking my register.
All right.
Hey, Rochelle. Not there yet. Sabrina.
Melissa's right here.
Oh, Melissa, yes, all set. Okay, Melissa, you put a big fat tick right there. Deandra. Okay. Chanel. Chanel is on mute. Okay.
Present.
Ah, there she is. Okay, Chanel. Wonderful.
see who else is on this Titanic. Kenyoka? Patronel.
Yeah.
There you are, Patronel. Everybody's screen is black. I just keep seeing myself. Every time I look up, I just see myself. Can you guys see me?
Yes, sir.
Just checking. Okay. Silva. Alexander. Karen. Altia?
Here am I.
Ah, there's Altia, yes. Altia McDonald, yes. Okay, Altia. Rithman. Clemis? Clemia.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Clemia. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Don't go too far away because I'll be asking you to introduce yourselves to me very shortly. So I'm just doing my register first. Joshua. Is that
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Joshua short for John. Okay. Angelica. Typical Rugrat, not present. Marcus. Is there anybody's name I didn't call who's with us already? Okay, great. So if they will be joining us, they will have to kick in when they kick in, but we will begin. Before the introductions, I just found a very short clip with some questions that I want you to listen to as certified financial planners. But before I do that, let me introduce myself first so that you know who you're dealing with from the beginning. My name is Samuel Wilkinson. Please make a note of that somewhere if you don't have that information already. Samuel Wilkinson. And my email address is S as in Samuel, J as in Jack, H as in Henry, Wilkinson, WILKINSON at hotmail.com. Okay. So throughout the next few weeks, if you have any questions or concerns or issues, please feel free to send me an email and I'll be happy to respond. Also, I have a cell number. You can call me or text me if you wish, 565-9551. 565-9551. Did everybody get all of that stuff?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful. Still only see myself. Okay. So before I ask for introductions then, I just want you to listen to this short clip. Since you're planning to be financial planners, I thought it was interesting. Here we go. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Is a financial planning.
Can you hear that guy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Career right for you? Take this short quiz to find out. You might learn something about yourself. 1. How comfortable are you with making sales? I could sell my grandmother a ticket to a Slipknot concert even though she'd probably hate it. I could sell my grandmother that Slipknot ticket, but I'd feel guilty if she didn't like the show. Only a bad person would sell his grandmother a Slipknot ticket. 2. How much of an extrovert are you? A. I've been the president of every club I ever joined. B. I have enough friends to make me happy. C. A good book, a room to myself, and no interruptions is my idea of heaven. 3. You could be described as A. Both analytical and a good communicator. B. Analytical but not a good communicator, or a good communicator but not analytical. C. Either analytical or a good communicator. 4. You prefer to work A. Completely independently. B. Somewhat independently. C. As part of a team. 5. What appeals most to you about becoming a planner is A. The challenge of building a client base. B. Creating my own business. C. The analysis of investments. If you answered A mostly, a financial planning career is right for you. If you went with B, you'll likely join the 80% of financial planners who leave the business in less than 5 years. And if you answered mostly C, don't even think about it.
Okay, there you go. I just thought I'd throw that in there, thinking about this part of your career. Did anybody answer C? Did anybody answer C?
Sorry, Mr. Wilkinson. I heard it, but I didn't hear it so clearly for me to answer the questions.
It wasn't that clear. Okay. Well, basically, the questions were, if you're an outgoing person who can sell fire to the devil, then being a financial planner is for you. If you're an introvert who really doesn't want to be bothered with people, building a client base and being concerned with whether or not you successfully persuade people to manage their finances well, then probably you're not going to be a good financial planner. That was the gist of it. And that was essentially designed to get you thinking about something you ought to have been thinking about all along. Okay, so let's get right into the introductions. Let me just say this right off the top. My lectures, so to speak, I tend to be very open lectures, meaning I don't necessarily want to just be shouting at you. If you have any opinions, thoughts, ideas, feedback, examples, cases, anything you want to share with me and your colleagues, please feel free to interrupt me at any time with a story, with a question, with a concern, whatever the case might be. Okay? Not a problem. All right, so introductions. Why don't we start with, let me use my sheet. Why don't we start with Joseph? Joseph, are you still there?
Yes, sir. Still here.
Okay, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, what you do, why the heck you're doing a certified financial planners course, and anything like that.
Okay. My name is Joseph Adley. I am currently employed at Credit Suisse on the client service desk in wealth management.
Yes.
And I wanted to do a financial planner course. This is something that I've been wanting to do for a while now. And I honestly like helping people, and it's something I feel that is needed within our country.
Excellent, which means that you would have answered mostly A in that little thing that I played, for sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the other thing is you work at a client desk, you said?
Yes, sir. Client.
Absolutely. So you are somewhat doing this thing almost naturally these days.
Yes, sir. Every day.
Yeah, it's hard to work at a client desk and continue to be mean and stinky and uninviting
Right.
and all that stuff indefinitely, for sure. Okay,
Yes,
so absolutely, you are definitely in the right place. Welcome aboard.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Melissa, introduce yourself.
Hi, how you doing?
Fine.
That's good. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
I've been in the financial sector. I've worked in a bank before.
Yeah.
I always loved accounts from when I was in high school. The financial field has always been my passion. And so I've worked along with a lot of financial institutions. I'm not like the intermediate. So I do this basically every day as well. I assist persons with any type of applications,
Okay.
um, loan application, mortgage applications,
Oh,
whether it's
excellent.
dealing with government, incorporating companies, um, business license, birth
Excellent.
certificates. I work along with lawyers as well too.
Okay. Oh,
So
those people. Okay, if you say so.
yeah, so
Mhm.
I have a mixture of the legal work and the financial field, but I
Then
enjoy it. I have the experience and I'm getting older and I just actually I realized that I don't have a problem working with wanting to work with, offshore banks or even in the banking field. Like I look in the newspaper and they looking for like, loan officers and stuff like that, representative. But I have the experience, but I want to get certified in what I do
yes.
because I'm also doing pen force as well, legal secretary as well. I prepare documents, affidavits, and everything. So I just want my papers, and I want to carry myself on a higher level and make some serious money.
Yeah.
Get a really good, decent job. I don't have a problem with freelancing, but sometimes as you get older, you just want more and different things, and to get different things, you have to elevate yourself and um, um, educate yourself too. You have to be on par with what's happening in society.
Indeed, and
So
eventually settle
yeah,
in somewhere that is substantive.
yeah.
Sure. So you are definitely on the right track. It sounds to me like getting older means you're almost 19 or 20.
Me? My birthday is next month. I'm gonna be 40.
Kiss my foot. You sound like a 20-year-old.
Thank you. I look young too. People
I
think I'm in my 20s.
I could believe that. And I suspect
Yeah.
as soon as somebody doggone comes on camera, I keep seeing myself. I'll be able to confirm that for myself. But yeah, I kind of see where you are. You're still young, but you're certainly not as young as you were 20 years ago. So you are
Right.
on the right track. You don't have time now to procrastinate anymore. Just do what you have to do, get your
Yeah.
certifications, start applying for a job that you think you can be comfortable in for the next 20 years of your life,
Right.
so to speak, and get cracking.
Yeah.
Doggone it. No more
Mhm.
tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow.
No.
Because if you keep doing that, then soon you'll be as old as I am and still saying tomorrow. All
And
right.
time flies, man. Time really flies too. Like my mom, she's like probably 20, 23 years older than me, but I want to be comfortable when I get older, and I realize she's getting my aunt is getting the retirement fund at NIB, and I realized that is not no money and their life still goes on as if they're young just like us. So I want to put myself in a different position, man.
Yeah, that sounds good to me, which means you have to start now and do those things you need to do so that the next 20 years will be solid years. And
Yeah,
certainly, this particular designation, I'm sure you've seen already from some of the things you've done, will really help you to go there. Okay.
yeah,
I don't know if you've ever done any accounting classes in your life.
yeah. My
Good.
first job was at an accounting firm.
Have
I
you
did
done
a
any
lot of financial proposals and statements.
have you done any certification? Do you have any paper?
No,
No.
see,
So
that's just it. Like I just gifted. Like once you show me something, like I learn fast, I adapt, and I apply it in my life and helping other people as well.
which
But I
means that
want
you
I
need to
want my
get the
papers,
papers.
you know?
Yeah, you do need to get the papers. Okay.
Yeah,
So come next year when the corona is gone or not gone, you need to add one or two accounting classes to your resume because
yeah,
they will be very helpful to you.
I'll do
Or,
that.
or I keep encouraging everybody to do an accounting class, but some people don't think they need it for some strange reason. All right. But certainly
Hmm.
from what I hear coming from you, one or two accounting classes, will be a significant help to what you already know and help to kind of move you along. Okay, so yeah, you on the right track. Um, keep on keeping on. Just no, don't procrastinate. Time does fly.
Yeah, I realized that.
I'm telling you, I was 40 about 3 minutes ago. I'm not kidding you. Okay, and my children were little children, all that crap, and then all of a sudden,
Yeah,
everybody grew up. I'm not this. I'm not that. I went from like black hair to black and white, and now this, and
yeah,
it happened in a flash.
it does.
Okay, there you go. Word to the wise is sufficient.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and
Thanks.
welcome,
All right.
welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Chanel Gibson, who are you?
Present.
Okay, presentation. Senora or Senorita Chanel?
Senorita.
Señorita,
Yes.
aún señorita, no señora. ¿Qué pasa? No marido? I mean, no husband. It's okay. Don't rush.
Get after it all.
Don't rush it, but don't rush and don't wait. That's it. Okay, Chanel, let it rip.
Okay, so I am Chanel Gibson, and I am employed within the financial sector, also at Fidelity Bank.
Excellent.
I am the A to the question you asked us earlier about financial being a financial planner.
Excellent. So you
So I
definitely
work with clients
yes.
every day, selling and assessing, and I also help with. I do financial coaching as is now, but in terms of saying being a planner certified to give that
Advice.
sound right advice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you
So
well
that
on
is
your
something
way.
I really wanted to pursue.
Yes.
And I do have future goals in that area to expand with helping others on a larger scale.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So somewhere between the academic stuff that you're doing and your practical experience, like Melissa, you guys are well on your way. Okay.
Yes.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Doggone it. My few bucks at National Insurance seems to be safe with you guys. God forbid, like Melissa say, it's a few pennies. I hope not, because if it's a few pennies, I'm going to starve to death. Melissa. All right. Thank you, Chanel. Okay. Who's next on my list? Patronelle.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Patronelle.
My name is Patronelle Johnson.
Okay.
I currently work at Capital Union Bank. But at my previous job, for about 5 years, I was a junior client relationship officer.
Yes.
And during that time, I really enjoyed working with clients, assisting them with their financial goals and needs. And with this job, I don't work with clients, and I really found that I think that was my passion. So moving forward now, trying to get my certification, and I plan to move back into that client relationship officer field.
Sounds good. Don't wait. If you're planning to go back, start moving as you prepare.
Right.
Okay. Don't say, well, I'll finish first and then, because some other crap might come up and delay that, and then some other crap. So start moving towards that end, even as you prepare. That's the way to go. And you're certainly on the right track and doing the right thing. All right. I don't know. I'm sure you guys have looked at all the various programs with the Institute. And for many of you, there are one or two other kinds of courses that you will eventually do. You should do, you must do, in terms of what I hear in your discussion about what you want to do going forward. So keep your eyes on the sparrow and keep on trucking. I'm just happy it's you youngsters suffering now. Maybe I can take a moment's break. Maybe. Not yet. I have a son who's in university. He's 23 and he isn't finished yet. And I tell him he needs to hurry up. Does anybody know why?
Your pension money?
Yeah, yeah, my pension money is gone from they were born, it seems. Because it seems like I've been paying school money from flicking, I don't know when, forever. All right, so he's the last on the list, and I'm like, hurry up, mister.
Yeah, hurry up.
Yeah, before I just throw the
Get it.
whole gauntlet down and go to cat key or something. Sit down. Been a long time. Children are very expensive. Okay, thank you so much. You're definitely on your way, Pat, for now. All right.
Okay.
Altia?
Yes.
Hey, Altia, let it rip.
Good, good night, everyone. My name is Altia McDonald.
Yes.
The reason why I'm taking this course is because I've always fancied numbers. I tried accounting. I actually, as a matter of fact, I did accounting. It was fun for me for the challenge, but I found more of an interest in finance.
Right.
So I said, let me take that avenue,
Right.
and I'm digging this so far. I'm actually appreciating it a whole lot more than accounting. I work at Commonwealth Bank as an accounts officer,
Okay.
and in after I graduate, my intention is to take a wealth management course also,
Sounds good.
and so I can further my knowledge, broaden my horizon, so I can be a efficient and effective financial planner.
Sounds good to me. Doggone it. Looks like I can die in peace. You guys are doing well. Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep it up. I just say that because it's amazing. Just listening to you talk, it causes me to reminisce many decades ago when I was a youngster thinking about what the hell am I going to do and thinking I'll never get through the madness and all that stuff. And then here I am from an afro and black hair to no afro and white hair and passing all that madness. I just say that only to say to you, that's to encourage you to keep moving forward. Okay? And from what I
Well,
can hear, you guys are well on your way. All right. Thank you, Altia. Rithman, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, Rithman, let it rip.
I'm not sure what question I joined late.
Oh, what
So,
okay.
Rithman McKinney, I've been with Scotiabank 14 years. The current role I'm in, I manage, we call it GTB, which is Global Transaction Banking. So that's the online banking department as well as merchant services.
Okay.
Based on the question, I'm assuming you asked why we joined this course.
Exactly.
I joined this course, truthfully, I like to learn.
Okay.
Someone told me that they could never take the knowledge away from you. So being a well-rounded banker, it keeps me marketable, especially in this type of environment.
Yes.
I hope to transition into maybe one of the corporate relationship manager role. That's where I see myself in the next 2 to 3 years.
Sounds
so I feel as if this would be a good asset to have.
It definitely would. I can assure you. Okay. 3 million years ago, I was a young Scotia banker as well, and kind of thinking along with the path of which way am I going to go, and doing the courses and the work connected to those things I was thinking about. So definitely, you're on the right track. Keep on keeping on. All right, way to go. Okay, Clemia, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
All right. My name is Clemia Smith. I am a financial solutions specialist at Royal Bank. I joined this, decided to take up this course as I honestly wanted to sharpen my skills to ensure that, I provide my clients with the best sound financial advice because that is a part of my role now.
Yes.
And I want to sharpen that to make sure, even though I should be doing it now, but, there's always room for improvement to make sure that I am sending them out with the best advice. And I just honestly love every aspect of the business and financial world. So I want to look at this avenue, take this route to make sure I'm setting my clients up for success and also myself so that I can further diversify my portfolio.
That sounds good to me. Sounds good to me. Well, you're certainly on the right track, and I'm sure you've seen already that a whole lot of the material that you would have discussed before now um, would be information that you'll be using well into the future. Not to mention some of the stuff that we'll be discussing over the next 3 weeks that have to do with risk management. Uh, Risk management is a never-ending subject. It's even more endearing than compliance and other newfound issues that keep haunting the world these days. But certainly, no planner, no person, no organization worth their salt can even be thinking about moving forward in those jobs without knowing that risk management issues are all around. And that's really one of the reasons why you're doing this module, so that at least to make you aware of the concept of risk and risk management to an extent, hopefully, that goes a little beyond perhaps what you might know already. So, yes, you guys are definitely on the right track. Okay, Josh.
Good night. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, for sure.
Yeah. So my name is Joshua Smith. I mean, I don't have a big role in the bank like all of these other people here.
Yeah,
but
like Rithman.
Yeah,
Doggone it. GT, whatever the hell.
Exactly.
Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it.
And Josh, not only does he have some egg thing that he calls GT, whatever that is, but in addition to that, Rithman is thinking about extending his horizons into the corporate side of the bank.
Exactly.
Which does my heart good. In case
I want to be like
I
him and
don't understand what he's saying. It does my heart good.
That's what I learned from you, Mr. Wilkinson, in your previous courses. That's what I learned.
I know you did. And I have this big smile on my face, and I'm thinking, damn, that worked. Because here's Rithman. Well, you guys don't know the deal with Rithman and myself. But yeah, Rithman did some other courses with me when he was a youngster. He's still a youngster, a younger youngster, so to speak. And he has grown into this extraordinary professional. And I just say that not to encourage him as well. And for all of you who are working on that I've heard, and Josh, who's about to say, hey, I'm not that Rithman thing yet, but I'm working on it, damn it. That's the whole idea. Okay, way to go. All right, Joshua, let it rip.
Yeah, well, I'm a financial solutions associate at Royal Bank, and that's just like a glorified name for teller. But
that's the thing, you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, but I just got out of school in May. I did my bachelor's in finance, and after all that headache, I was like, I didn't want to go straight into the CFA. I wanted to take a little break and what's not. So I chose to do the CFP because I knew that it'll be a lot less intensive and it will require a lot of study hours. Yes. So I chose to do this CFP right now to cool down and to really be
I know what you mean.
Yeah, to be to be well-rounded, because I want to do like asset/wealth management.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's why I'm doing this CFP now, and then once I'm done this, I'll be moving on to the CFA.
Sounds good. I can only tell you this, and I'm sure you may have heard rumors about it already. The CFA is a fairly vigorous certification, but if you've been able to get a bachelor's degree, the only thing that can keep you from a CFA is your own procrastination and laziness. Other than that, you should have no problem. It will challenge you, but it's a very good designation to have, especially if you are thinking about swirling around in financial planning and investments and things of that nature. Okay. Yeah. So that sounds good to me. Make sure you get an instrument and mark CFA somewhere on your body so that you do not fail to do it. It's a good designation to have if you're thinking about doing it. And hopefully, when I see you in the next 2 or 3 years, you'll be able to say, I'm done with it and I'm still alive. How's that? All right. So way
Yeah,
to go, way to go, way to go. All right. So here we are then. All of you guys are exactly where you need to be based on what I've heard. And so I'm happy that you made the decision to do this particular certification, because clearly for most of you, if not all of you, it is going to be of significance in one form or another. Now, let me just say this before we go on. Financial planners do all kinds of things, if you don't know that yet. Okay, financial planners are those persons who sit down with people to help them plan their finances. Because a lot of people make money, they make a little money, they make a lot of money, but oftentimes they don't know how to manage their money. Interestingly enough, especially in the Bahamas, Bahamians don't like to pay financial planners to help them, because we have this notion in the Bahamas that we don't need anybody to help us with our money. Plus, we don't want anybody to know anything about our money and so on. We tend to be that way. But in more developed countries where people are more civilized, quote unquote, I'm just being facetious, in terms of opening up to get the appropriate financial help, like the United States and Canada and the UK and Europe and all these places, even in South America, financial planners do extremely well, whether they're in the firm or in their own private practice. Because for the most part, people don't have a problem paying for that service. They don't have a problem opening their finances up and saying, hey, I'm a mess financially. I need help to organize my situation, my finances. All right. So right off the top, this thing that you're doing has so many potential benefits in the future. And so I say, keep on keeping on. Financial planners also get involved in things like tax planning, risk tolerance, depending on the organization and the type of risks they have. They may call a financial planner in and say, hey, I need you to sit down and evaluate my risks in this organization and make some suggestions about what I need to do. And if that happens, especially if you're going to be paid for it, then you go and find the notes and discussions that we're going to have for the next 3 sessions and blow off the dust. Say, wait a minute, risk management, let me check some of this stuff out and see if I can make some money. All right. But the idea is the designation allows you to branch into many areas of financial planning, where you can specialize in one area like tax planning alone, or you can perhaps do 2 or 3 areas together, where you can offer your expertise to persons who need the help. Asset allocation, how to manage and invest cash and securities and real estate and whatever other assets you might have, or your client, you can sit with them and tell them the best way to organize their assets, where to put what. All right. And let's not forget estate planning. I think it was Josh who said something about he's looking at something in wealth management. Embedded in there somewhere is something called estate planning for the rich and famous and the not so rich. You don't have to be rich to plan an estate. If you have $50,000, you can sit down and plan, like, when I die, who is going to get my 50,000 and who won't. Okay, so you do not have to be rich to get advice on how to manage your financial affairs. And these are all the things that financial planners do, whether you're aware of it or not. And let's not forget the all-important issue of retirement planning. And again, in the Bahamas, we have these things, but we haven't gotten to the point yet where we're prepared to pay a professional to help us fix it, because basically we don't want to pay. Then we think we could do it ourselves. Then I don't want my friend from Baintown know what I need, or that I'm in trouble, or whatever the reasons are. Okay, but I suspect that in time we're going to open up a little bit more as a local people and understand what persons in the rest of the world are doing as far as financial planning and the importance of getting somebody to help you organize your life. If you have financial planning issues, that's the whole point. So you guys are in deep waters doing the certification. Deep waters meaning only that there are a host of opportunities once you are qualified and with a little experience under your belt for you to do all kinds of interesting things if you are feeling creative. All right. Does that make any sense to anybody? Am I the only one in the room?
No.
Okay, just checking. Just want to make sure I'm not the only one in the room. Remember, I'm going to be yapping about stuff, but I don't really want to be yapping 24/7. Feel free to jump in at any time. Say stuff, make up stuff, let it rip. Okay?
All right.
Let me ask another question before we go any further. Um, what have you guys been discussing up to this point? Can anybody remember anything?
What we've been discussing up to this point? What,
Yeah,
in this class?
yeah, before this class.
What were we doing?
Yeah, what were you doing?
Oh, we were doing like know your customers. We was doing the basic of um scenarios of how to basically like handle different cases. What we
Okay,
looking for. So we had like different scenarios of persons starting their business or owning their business, for need that wanted to borrow funds, or like it's just looking at a case by case basis and
okay.
assessing the file.
And so based on those case experiences, you were able to gather anything specific, like anything specific out of those cases? Like based on those cases, I have been able to determine what?
Um, we were able to determine that everybody is on different level of financial status. We had a case where, you know, there were two brothers, I think it was, that, just had a normal life, family, basic career. They just joined their business together to try to advance it, but they were just average. And then there
Yes.
were another case where these people like I would consider them millionaires. They had businesses around the world. They were merging some of their businesses. It's like it was group of companies buying each other out or whatever. Like, it's just different levels. So there are greater assessment and there are smaller assessment.
Indeed. And so those cases were designed to kind of open your minds up to the various approaches, I presume, in
Correct.
terms of how to assess potential clients who are
Yeah,
on
how
a
to have an
small scale.
open mind.
Yeah, and whether they're small scale clients or large scale
Yeah.
clients. Absolutely. I'm sure you would have figured out by now, if not from your own job life experience, that clients, all of them have a different mindset. So when you approach a client as a certified planner, you cannot use the same approach for everybody. You will find that you have to change your technique, your approach, and the way you do things depending on your client. People have different moods, different egos, different agendas. And so what worked with Tommy over there will not work with Mary over here.
Yeah.
And if you haven't figured that out already, experience will teach you that somewhere down
Yeah.
the line. Okay. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of like dating. If you're dating somebody and it doesn't work, you can't take the same dating thing to the other person because that person is a completely different person. And so
Yeah.
financial planning is something like that. You have to adapt to the situation. And that's not necessarily something you learn in a textbook or in a session like this or the ones you've done, but certainly in time, if you have it in the back of your mind, or maybe one or two embarrassing situations will teach you very quickly that you have to adapt to the circumstances, or you will live to regret it, because clients will sometimes tell you, as you know, up front, how dare you, kind of thing. Okay? All right. So let's take a moment. Did Miguel send you guys the case study?
Yeah.
Great.
Actually, I just looked at it briefly this evening, but
That's fine. I'm just going to take a moment to discuss it before we get into the actual lecture. Let me see if I can share this thing. Okay, share screen. I'm still playing with this new toy, share screen. Did I get it? Yes. Can you guys see my screen?
yeah,
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 yeah.
we could.
Okay, great. It's the same thing that you have. I just wanted to make sure you could see it. Now, this case study is, I know, another case study. This case study is, again, to give you a different perspective that financial planners must always have, because remember, I just told you that financial planners are not just one-dimensional. Financial planners, depending on where you specialize, uh, may be expected to do any number of things. And I think I mentioned some of them, like, anybody remembers what I said? What are some of the functions? What do financial planners do? Give me one example.
What do financial planners do?
Yeah, like what specific job do you do?
You said tax planning.
Tax planning, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Tax planning. For example, if somebody needs a VAT application done in the Bahamas, for example, and you understand how VAT works, then you can help somebody who may have no idea about the best way and the circumstances surrounding the preparation of a VAT return. Now, again, this is just for persons who specialize in that area. Everybody's going to perhaps be in their own area, and many people are going to be in the firm using this stuff. But because you work in a firm like a bank or insurance company or some other entity, it doesn't mean that tax planning will not come to your desk, because we know in international banking, tax planning is a major problem, because one of the reasons why the Bahamas is suffering now is because the OECD and the FATF are trying to get us to implement a tax system on our companies. And since the Bahamas is a tax-free zone, they continue to call us a tax haven, and therefore there are tax issues. So if you're a financial planner, you can find yourself dealing with tax issues inside the firm as well, not just outside the company, like in your own business. All right. And I'm just trying to get you to start thinking about these things, because I mean, we're going to spend the next 3 weeks talking about risk management and the academic side of it. But these other things are real issues, and all of them have a certain level of risk attached to them in one form or another, which is what makes it interesting. All of a sudden, a lot of this stuff you're learning, if you haven't done so already, you'll see that there's a strange kind of interconnection between the material. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. Back to our case study. So this case study is about the Smith House Hotel. And Mr. Smith is talking about how he has been running his motel and how he wants to make some changes. He wants to expand his motel. He wants to borrow more money and do some other things so that he can increase his income and basically be better off next year than he perhaps is this year, which is fine, provided that Mr. Smith takes into consideration all the relevant factors, or as many as he possibly can. He also needs to consider, is this something that Mr. Smith needs to be thinking about since he runs a motel? Or does Mr. Smith need to get an accountant or financial planner like you guys? Okay. So right off the top, the case begs the question about those very important things. A lot of people don't consider those things. They think that they can do these things on their own. I can do it. And then they mess it up. Or they don't want to pay a financial planner to do a complete job, so they want to pay you $200. Just come and look around quick and tell me something quick and then leave because I only have $200 to pay you, or whatever the issue is. And then at the end of the day, the job is not done well. And of course, another business bites the dust. Speaking about bite the dust, I drove through the Harbor Bay Mall today and I see a lot of empty spaces. Anybody saw any empty spaces, or that's just me?
I know, I mean on that side.
You haven't been on that? Has anybody been in Harbor Bay recently?
Yeah, they have a few closures. I think Fashion Hall definitely isn't there.
Yeah, Clemia, you're right.
Mhm.
And a couple other spaces that are empty. They're trying to clean them out, I guess, waiting for what? New tenants. There are a lot of other places across New Providence as well, where there are a lot of empty buildings that used to be booming before when? The
Pandemic.
pandemic, of course.
Fashional was closing down before pandemic though.
Well,
There was.
well, I can believe that. Because remember, not everybody died from COVID, even though they
That's
caught
true.
COVID.
That's true.
As
That's
a matter
also
of fact,
true.
They did it.
Don't start.
Sorry?
I said, don't start the conspiracy theories now. Don't start it. Don't start it.
I'm sorry, I can't help it. I've been around too long not to do it.
Well, I agree with you too here.
The CDC has already said that 2/3 of the COVID cases in the US were not COVID related. People were dying. 10,000 people were already terminally ill. So
Agreed.
COVID or World War V, they would have been gone anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
Right? And another 150,000 people died from high blood pressure, heart attack. Somebody crashed into a car, into a tree, and died on the scene. And they said they died from COVID.
Yeah, they tested positive. Yep. That's it. That happened over here too. They're doing the same thing over here.
Of course. And so, like, sorry, yeah, the conspiracy theory. I get it. That stuff, like, yeah, the older I get, the more it pisses me off.
And we could be even worse now, especially if Donald Trump loses election. We could be worse than about. That's the next thing. But anyway.
Not only worse, Griffman, like my grandma used to say, what's up?
What's up? Mm-hmm.
Okay? And those stinky, doggone Democrats are being allowed to get away with murder. And Bahamians are supporting them.
Yeah, they know what they're supporting.
No,
right.
They don't know that they're supporting the snake and the devils in hell. Well, I'm just being dramatic so you guys could remember. So when crap kicks in, lady, you say, kiss my face. Say that.
When it sneak up on them.
Yeah, see, the Bahamas is always better. It's always better when a Republican party's in power.
Always.
Economic policies.
Always. And we still don't seem to get it. Even Americans don't seem to get it.
No.
Imagine that.
It's the media, man. It's the media.
But I'll tell you, yes, that's another, and since my talk is not media, because I could go off on that as well. That's another problem.
Let's get back to the case study. We ain't gonna mess up this class. Get back to the case study.
The conspiracy theory stuff is so much more exciting though.
It is.
Doggone.
Well, company, that's fine.
Yeah, stop it.
Well, let me say this.
This class ain't free. This is not cheap.
No, but and that's why I'm going to attach the risk management to it. Everything we just said has risk management implications. True or false?
True.
Okay, so we didn't waste our time on that one. Doggone it. All I did was to create a correlation that most people don't even think about risk management related to Trump. How come? Stinking Trump, because they don't get it. That the fact that if he loses, there's a whole lot of other kinds of risk that are going to come up that's going to affect the Bahamas as well.
Our financial sector is going to take a hit.
No question about it.
Financial sector is going to take a hit.
Plus, the Democrats are going to force us to start like having same-sex marriages, flicking abortions, gay rights, the whole alphabet, LGBTQ, ABC, Z, or whatever the hell they're doing. Those are all risk issues, are they not?
It is. It
Yeah.
is. But separate apart from the civil rights aspect, from a financial, when we talk about, we gonna feel it.
No
Totally.
question about it. One
Yeah.
way or the other. I'm sorry for you youngsters, because see, you guys are on the front line now. All right. Many decades ago, like we were on the front line. I was a youngster, like, what the hell? Now you guys are going to, and I'm happy you actually recognize it. So at least you could deal with it somewhat. Okay. But you're absolutely right. All right. Okay. So you can see when you get to reading this case and its assumptions and all that stuff, you'll see it's designed to kind of give you another perspective from the not only the risk management perspective, but also the professional planning person perspective, because you need to have, depending on what your specialties are, a broad overview so that when it's time to advise somebody, even if that is not your specialty, you have enough information to get things going and perhaps send them off to someone who can actually do what they need done. The point is, you'll be familiar. All right, so take a look at this case. And when you've done reading the case, there's some questions at the end, which I would like for you to answer to the best of your ability. There's no right and wrong answer. And we will discuss this case in our final session, which is 2 weeks from now. Okay, so you have time to put it together. All right, and then when we come back on the 19th, we'll sit down and have a little chit chat about what you came up with in terms of answering these questions. Now, in addition to answering the questions, if you have some other thoughts that are not part of the question, please make note of them and raise them so that you can enlighten somebody who may not have thought about it. All right. So that's your little extracurricular that we'll talk about in 2 weeks. Okay. Whatever you do though, don't wait until like the night before and say, you know what, it's been a busy 3 weeks. Let me see if I can scratch out something on this case study. Try not to do that, because if you do that, then you're not going to give it your
Yes.
yeah. Okay.
Just
All
being
right.
consistent, that's all.
Yeah, for some of us, it's the norm. All right. So let's get into the lecture then. Let me just pull up my slides here, which you should have. Let's see. Yep, there you go. Can you guys see my slide as well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So you have it there with you. The reason why I like this, because the writing is nice and clear. I used to have 2020, I don't know, whenever that was. But as time rolls on, it becomes some other thing. Okay, let's go. So this part of your program is called risk management. And you will see soon enough, if you haven't seen it already, why certified financial planners must be thinking about risk issues. Now, we're going to be talking about all kinds of little bits and pieces that for some of you might even seem like, well, whatever, doesn't seem to apply to me. But I can assure you, whether you recognize it tonight or the next 3 weeks as applying to you, I can assure you it does. And if it doesn't immediately get your attention, it will, for sure, because that is the nature of risk. All right. Now, what I would like to do before I go any further, actually, again, is I'm going to go down my list of students again. And when I call your name, I want you to give me an example of a risk issue that you have identified in your firm. And if you can't think about a risk issue in your firm, then say something about a risk issue that you saw somewhere, whether it's in your home, in church, on the road, whatever, or in your firm. Okay, let's see what we come up with. Risk issues. Back to the top again. Joseph, we're starting with you. Give us
Yes,
an example of a risk issue.
we're working in an offshore bank. A common risk issue we have to deal with persons that reside in the U.S. or have U.S. bank accounts,
Why is that risky?
etc. Pardon me?
Why is that risky?
Because of the money laundering, fraudulent attempts.
Yes. See, and that's the reason why I'm glad you used that example, because some of your colleagues may not be aware of those issues. So now, all of a sudden, they are a little more enlightened about something they may have no idea about immediately, but it would prick their curiosity, wouldn't it?
Yes, sir.
So yeah, this guy, Joseph, works in an offshore bank. And in offshore banks, we have international clients who are involved in all kinds of stinky stuff called money laundering and terrorist financing and proliferation financing and human trafficking and tax evasion and, well, I could go on, but the night isn't long enough. So all of a sudden, risk isn't just like not insuring your house and it burns down. Risk is a whole bunch of stuff. And depending on where Joseph works, if he doesn't do certain things, the risk will find itself on him as well. Because then if something goes wrong, they'll say, you didn't do the KYC, Joseph, correct?
Sure. For sure.
Or you saw a suspicious transaction, and according to the laws of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, you took the risk of not reporting it as the law requires. So you are guilty, dude. And they can go so far as to fine him, fine his organization, and even imprison him. Correct or not, Joseph?
Absolutely correct. 100%.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are on your little cherry jobs where the risk is not that high, just be aware that not everybody has that luxury. People like Joseph, he does not. He has to be aware of what's going on around him. And in the case of suspicious transactions reporting, he can feign ignorance like I didn't know, because the law already says every year you have to train your staff so everybody knows, correct?
Correct.
And so if you don't train staff, you run the risk of people being ignorant and therefore violating the law. That's my point. So what am I saying? Even before we get to the second slide, big time risk, serious risk that a lot of professionals don't even see as serious yet because they don't get it. That's the other thing. So if you go into other parts of the world and you start understanding the nature of these risks, including the ones that Joseph mentioned, you'll be shocked how serious it is. My. Well, if I made that sound intense, it's on purpose so you could remember, just in case.
Definitely intense though.
Indeed. Because it is that serious, okay?
Yeah.
I used to work for an offshore bank once where I was the compliance manager and the central bank came in to do an on-site examination. They discovered some discrepancies and they wanted the responses within the central bank's designated time. I had a French Canadian managing director who did not want me to put certain responses in the central bank response, even though that's what they said they required. So he says, Ms. Wilkinson, you can't say this. I'm like, we have to say that, or we run the risk of being what? Sanctioned by the central bank, correct?
Yeah.
Well, maybe, Mr. Wilkinson, but Comitalo, he was a French Canadian guy, and he wanted to insist that I took it out of my compliance report. How the hell I could take it out of my compliance report, and I'm the compliance manager? And then he turns and says, do you know who your boss is, Mr. Wilkinson? I said, I certainly do. And then I said in my mind, I wish I could say it in French. But I did say we, don't we, yeah, we. Meaning yes, meaning I still have to put it in my report. Otherwise, I run the risk of what I just told you I run the risk of doing. And that's what risk is all about. And how do you manage, and this is a risk management session. And how do you manage that risk? You manage that risk, it's simple. You don't have to pay a premium, just put in the truth, true or false.
True.
Because if you lie, you run the risk of what? Violating the law, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And ending up in prison, losing your job, and ruining or messing up with your company's what? Reputation and
Reputation.
yours. And yours.
That's my risk right there too.
That's mine too. Because I have two
That's my
sons
risk,
and
being
they're
the
both,
intermediate.
man, yes, absolutely. So again, we're going to be talking about different kinds of risk and how to be aware of them and how to approach them and that kind of stuff. But that's the academic side of it, which is important. But I'm just kind of throwing this real life stuff out so that as you deal with academia, don't forget that there's a real world consequence to this stuff. And Joseph just gave you an example in the job that he's in. And who said it? Melissa said that? Somebody else said it. All right. So keep that in mind while you're learning this academic stuff. Because we're going to be talking all kinds of crap. So a risk assessment, risk evaluation, all that stuff. That's important because that's designed to help you to look at your risk wherever you are and to decide how best to deal with it. All right. Thank you very much, Joseph, for giving us that very critical example of risk because it's actually forefront in the Bahamas. We have a group from Europe called FATF. Anybody ever heard about them?
No.
FATF? Financial Action Task Force?
No.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should Bahamian financial institutions be concerned about FATF?
If they should.
Yeah,
Of
should you?
course.
Why? What happens if we don't concern ourselves with FATF? What is the risk there? I know.
What they do?
Aha. I was hoping somebody would say what they do because there's still a lot of us don't even know what they do. And that's okay because that may not
I
be.
can't even answer you.
No, because that may not be connected to your world of work because that is a financial services issue. And if you're in financial services and you still don't know, then your training program needs to be
Updated.
Amended.
uh-huh. Absolutely. Because if you don't train your staff properly, then you run the risk of yes, all those things I just said.
Yeah.
And other things too. So if you think this risk management thing is just about the stuff that you see on your templates, on your copies, it is about those things because those techniques are supposed to help you deal with your risk. But imagine if you don't know what the risk is, you don't have anything to deal with, you don't know what it is. And a lot of companies and people are like that. They have risk to deal with, but they don't know what it is until it happens. And then all hell.
Break loose.
Yeah, they say, why did God do this to me? And so on. That's what happens. All right. So yeah, but just for your information, the Financial Actions Task Force is a European entity like the OECD who has told countries like the Bahamas, if you do not deal with your money laundering and terrorist financing laws and issues, and if you don't start putting tax rates in place so that you don't be considered a tax haven, then we're going to keep you on what we call the blacklist. Ever heard about that? The gray list.
Yeah, we on the gray list, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Still, after all that crap we did already to satisfy them, we're still on the bloody gray list. And the problem with the gray list is because we run the risk of running into problems when we try to do business internationally. That's the problem with the gray list. And that is the risk to financial services in the Bahamas, just like voting for Democrats. Same thing, different issue.
Mm-hmm. Watch for the increased regulation.
My.
Or a PM,
Okay?
definitely.
No question. And a lot of people don't even understand the implications of increased regulations. So the ignorance carries with it a what? Another kind of risk, what? Altogether.
Yep.
It's high. Okay. Now, a lot of these things are not even in our discussion of risk management techniques, but they sure as hell out there. Everywhere. And some of us are totally oblivious, like, man, whatever. I need to go count money because I work in cash at the casino. And that's all there is. Okay? But so I just thought I'd throw that out to get your mind going. Thank you so much, Joseph, for opening a can of worms. Okay, Melissa, what's your risk? Example that you see. One. Melissa? Melissa has taken a moment. While we wait for Melissa to come back, Chanel, what's your risk?
Cybercrime.
Cybercrime. Why do you say cyber?
Because a lot of things are more virtual now, and so you have a lot of transactions happening virtually.
Absolutely.
Online banking and emails and people being able to tap into your email and send on your behalf, making it seem as though it's you.
Absolutely.
And banks are acting on it and they're able to access some of your online banking. So they have access to your account. So a lot of information is exposed.
Chanel, I couldn't say it better myself. And anybody in the 21st century who is not thinking about that, they are drunk, they are out in left field, they are ignorant, and they're downright exposing themselves to considerable risk. The same risk. Notice we're still on the first slide, because that's the problem with risk. You could stay on risk forever and never finish. All right. So that's a very good example, Chanel. And those of you who have not been giving it consideration, even in your personal lives, not to mention companies, it's something to think about. All right, be careful. I'm sure you've heard about the many scams everywhere, in Nigeria, the South America, and all around the world. The Russians, the doggone Chinese, everybody is in the cyber madness, doing some nonsense. Not to mention those persons who are breaking into people's systems, locking it down, requesting ransom, and all this kind of stuff. All kinds of cyber madness, stealing identities and so on. So this risk is swirling around all of us. And as we get more and more into the cyber world, the risks are going to get even greater and greater. The cyber criminals are going to do the same as other criminals. Continue to cyber and see what they can steal and destroy. My. Thank you, Chanel. That's 2 eye openers in a row. Melissa, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, what's your risk?
My risk is basically shared information. I have to make sure that I'm sharing information because I'm the intermediary. Sharing information that's accurate. Do not sell dreams to people. I have to be on point as much as possible. So basically, I have to make sure that what I do is, it's almost like being a lawyer. I cannot tell a client I'm going to win the case. You know, like you can't sell them dreams. You only could just deal with them as they come and try to assist them as best as possible.
I agree, except there are some lawyers who do say, we got this, even though sometimes they know very well that there isn't a chance in hell. That's you want to give your client hope, but you don't want to be unethical and unreasonable in the process, because then you can run the risk of whatever you run the risk of by doing that stuff. All right.
Yeah, it caused me to not be a good representative. That might not be the word I want to use, but when it comes down to my face in the front with the banks,
yes,
you'll give me a bad name.
Reputation, that's the risk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Flat your tires too.
Sorry?
Something like that'll cause someone flat your tires too.
Of course, people have already flat bloody tires because of that stuff. And worse. Yeah, if they just flatten the tires, you say, thank God they only flatten the tires. Sometimes people go beyond flatten tires, they actually get somebody to hurt you.
Yeah, they stalk
or
you.
mess you up. Yeah, I'm telling you. And depending on where you are in the world, they might take you out completely, not just lick you in your head with conch shell. That's how serious this thing is.
Yeah.
Okay? That's how risky it could be if you don't be careful, thinking that, oh, it's not a big deal. I don't see any risk there. Some of the worst risks in the world are the ones you don't think you see.
Yeah.
That's the other problem. Yeah, absolutely. It's like if you're dating somebody's old girl and he comes, if I catch you with her again, I'll lick you in your head. And you're like, you guys are not together again. I don't care. Don't do it. Then you say, I'll do what I feel like. And then you do it. And then what happened? You run the risk of getting lick in your head or worse. Because nowadays, okay, I know it's weird. It's not even in these notes we're going to discuss, but it is a risk. And a lot of people have not lived to regret it
Yeah.
because they didn't consider the risk or they took the risk for granted. Same as we do with too many other risks. That's why financial planners have to study risk. All right. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Who's next on my list? Patronelle, did I call you already?
No, you didn't call me yet.
Okay. What's your risk, Patronelle?
We could think about banks and the risk of people defaulting on their loans.
Of course.
Especially during a time like this.
Of course. Thank you very much. You guys are right on the money with these risks. And you're calling all the key ones as well, not no little itsy bitsy. You're calling down heavy stuff. Okay? That risk that you're talking about has a name. It's called credit risk. And it's a big problem in the banking world when things are normal. It's a much bigger problem now because of the pandemic. Okay? And if you think it's a big problem for the banks who are not getting payments on time right now, imagine those persons who don't have a job and cannot make the payment. They run the risk of losing their homes after paying for it for what? 10, 15, 20 bloody years or longer. Of course. All right. Oh, gone it. This risk thing is spooky when you really start thinking about it in isolation. All right. Altia, what's your risk?
My risk is theft, because I do work in the bank. And given that some individuals in the bank, they hold negotiable instruments, not in dual custody. Let's say, for example, our tellers, they have checks where managers checks
Yes.
that can be printed.
Yes.
Some managers, not my managers per se, they may not be so consistent in their signature, therefore their signatures may be a little more simple.
Yes.
People who have already received checks, they can actually fraud these same signatures, somehow manage to get a check from one of our tellers, because it's actually happened before.
Yes.
And attempt to deposit that, and without due diligence from another teller, that can actually cause the bank to be a great loss.
No
And
question
a great
about it.
loss in actually a whole lot of way, especially without some, if they didn't take in consideration the delegation of authority.
Indeed. That is some very serious separation of duty, internal control issues. That's really what the kind of risk she's talking about. It's a very common problem in banking and similar financial institutions. And if you don't have your internal controls, your separation of duties, and your check and balances in place, your organization will lose money. And people are they're aware of this potential. And so if you don't have your act tight, you'll find that persons will always find a way around the system to defraud and embezzle and do those kinds of things she's talking about. Major risk if you don't have your controls in place. Not only do you have the controls in place, but you have to be consistent. You cannot do it sometimes and not all the time, because TIFAs are always looking for inconsistency. Is TIFAs a word?
No, sir.
No.
We clearly understand what you meant, though. We clearly understand what you meant.
Yes. For those of you youngsters who may not know, TIFAs is a Bahamianese for thieves. Okay? And folks are always looking for a way around the system. Don't presume for 1 minute that because they look innocent that they will not attempt to make a move on your agenda, depending on who you are. So that was well said, Aliyah. Keep your eyes and ears open because Althea, sorry. keep your eyes and ears open because people are always looking to do stuff, as you know, and try to get away with it, as you know. All right, thank you very much. Rithman, what's your risk?
Probably operational.
Okay, in what sense?
Given that Scotiabank would have recently made an announcement that they're going to be closing on 5 branches.
Kiss my foot.
Yeah, it is what it is.
That's a true story?
Yeah, that was in the news last week, I think.
I know.
You don't hear that?
Yeah, it's all right. I'm just checking.
Yeah.
I thought they made up their mind.
No. But given that they would now be coming out of certain areas, the risk is now exposed in terms of one, how are they gonna source and service clients? How are they gonna ensure that the necessary internal controls and policies will be met with a reduced staff? Like there's a lot of different risks that would come out of that.
Unfortunately, that's true. Some known and some unknown, and
as well as reputational.
Absolutely, definitely, because you know the people in Long Island are already cursing Scotiabank out from here to the ends of the earth, and any other place where they're moving. Absolutely, and some people are going to be so uptight about it because their family member is someplace where it was all kinds of reputational issues. And don't be surprised if you see some people say, I'm closing my account. What's your reason, man? No reason. Bastard. Moved out of Long Island where my Grammy is or something. And then they hold it against you. So yes, even reputational issues. All right. So those are some real key risk issues. I'm sure they can't anticipate at Scotia all of the potential risk issues. I'm sure they've tried to contemplate through brainstorming as many of them as they could. And then maybe there's some other risk issues that they decide, you know what, we'll have to bite the bullet. But yeah, all those things that he mentioned are consequences. And this is what risk is all about. And they're going to have to decide, like everybody else, how are we going to manage this risk? Okay, serious stuff. All right, Clamia, what's your risk?
Hi, well, I originally wanted to go with credit risk because I was first thinking of, the bank lending on an unsecured basis.
Yes.
So that's where I was headed.
Well, you were certainly headed in the right direction.
I then thought of country risk.
Yes, country risk. Why would you say that?
Definitely with all the commitments we have out there, in my opinion, if we don't honor these financial commitments as a country, it can definitely play a wager on anything when it comes to stocks and bonds in terms of borrowing for all the banks.
Unfortunately, you're right. As you know, our debt is now almost $9 billion. Between Dorian and pandemic, I think we probably borrowed about $3 or $4 billion within the last 2 years, perhaps something in that range. Those are just estimates, but it's somewhere around there. And yeah, there are some country risk issues and even credit risk issues attached to that stuff. And if we don't follow through and make our payments, nobody's going to care what our problems are. They're going to create some problems for us as a country in terms of reputation. We're not paying our debt. When it's time to raise money again, it'll be impossible. Or if we do get the money, it'll be at higher rates than we need them. And yeah, all kinds of risk issues attached to even the concept of country risk in the context in which she's saying. So yeah, that's a nice stride, Camilla, from credit risk. Okay, way to go. And then finally, Joshua, what's your risk?
Man, they already give all the risk, but I
Trust me, it only seems that way. If you know how long risk issues is, you will scream.
Man, well, for me, I'd say in the bank, every time I go to work, I experience personal risk because I could catch COVID at any time with dealing with all them clients.
Yes, why not? I mean, you talk about running out? No way. That is a very clear and present danger. All right.
Yeah.
In fact, that's one of the most recent risks that we have to
Solid.
pay attention to. Yes. And we're still battling with that, and we will be battling with that for some time to come, well into the new year. So, in a strange kind of way, while we have all the other risks that are always swirling around, we could move that one to the top of the list in a way. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, that is something that is facing us 24/7. We can't even invite our own family members over. We'd snuggle them and go to work and have a conversation with somebody at lunch without having to wrap up our faces and not get too close. So, yes, there is indeed a clear and present danger. Okay? Um, Pretty creative coming up with that one. That was the obvious one. I noticed even though it was at the bottom of the list, it has elevated itself right to the top of the list because it is so clear and present, just like every other risk mentioned tonight. All right, way to go, way to go. I hope by doing that exercise, if you hadn't been thinking about risk issues with any intensity before, that you don't let it keep you up at night, but certainly you don't go forward as professional planners and professionals in general without understanding that all kinds of risks are swirling around you. Okay. All right. So we are told right off the top that risk management is rapidly developing. Well, that's interesting because risk has been around forever. Those boats that they used to sail in the Middle Ages from one country to the next that took weeks and weeks and weeks, man, that's spooky. When you get on those boats, you have to wonder, like, are you ever going to get where you're going? And many of them didn't. So risk was always with us. When Abel turned his back on Cain, not knowing that Cain would hit him in his head and kill him, that was risk. He just didn't know it. And so if you don't have knowledge of risk, it's hard to manage it. If you don't care about risk, it's hard to manage it, and so on. And so all of these disciplines have come up now to get organizations to be more conscientious about risk, okay? And to ask questions like, what does risk management involve? How should it be done? And what is its purpose? Now, a lot of organizations actually, I'll tell you, what, like how most organizations have an internal audit department or compliance department or some such thing. Many of them do have risk management departments now, but many of them still don't. A lot of them turn it over to the compliance officer, the MLR officer, the typist, the doggone janitor or whatever, turning risk management issues over to some people that should never be dealing with it. But in fact, risk management issues should be handled at the highest level within the organization by a well-trained person or persons who can give direct recommendations and responses to the top management and the board. That's how high the risk management profile should be. Okay? But sometimes we relegate it to some other place like we used to do with compliance once upon a time. It is only in recent years that compliance is getting the professional recognition that it deserves. And so now we're trying to do the same thing with risk management in some cases. And that's not the ideal situation for organizations. And based on all those risks that you guys just pulled out of your hair without hardly thinking about it, and some very intense risk issues as well. And whether you believe it or not, every single risk that you guys mentioned is a risk that every organization, given its profile, should be thinking about. And there should be somewhere in the organization, someone, some group who's dealing with that stuff on a day-to-day basis. That's why when things blow, everybody is shocked. UBS is fined again. Doggone Credit Suisse didn't update the manual. Somebody violated KYC and all this kind of stuff. The Bahamas is still on the gray list because we wouldn't do what they say quickly enough. And whatever the case might be. So my point is, this thing about risk management is not new. The discipline is new. And because of that, organizations need to implement who's going to be doing this thing as soon as possible if they don't have one. Because as you can see, it can create nightmares for your organization and for you as employees as well. Because remember, any organization that takes undue risk and loses reputation or even goes out of business, what happens to its staff? You guys, you have to go home and start all over again. Okay? Some food for thought. All right, so how do we go about establishing this discipline? Well, first of all, we need to establish certain standards. Okay? And when I say standards, I mean organization needs to establish standards that are agreed upon across the board. What does that mean? All the relevant persons who are impacted by these risk standards or disciplines, they need to know. Okay? So whatever language you're using, everybody should know what they mean. Not if you in Canada, you have one language, when you get to the Bahamas, you have another one, you got a Trinidad, there's another one. Certain things need to mean the same, especially when they come to risk management, so that everybody is on the same page. Otherwise, you're going to defeat the purpose. Firms should be thinking about how are we going to carry out this risk management program? How are we going to structure it? And what are our objectives? These are questions that should be brainstormed, thought about, discussed at board meetings, and then once we have a position as a company, pass it down so that all staff members are aware. And there should be reminders from time to time to keep staff members aware, just like compliance issues, just like KYC issues, just like any other kinds of issues where the law requires us to be aware of what's going on, the reporting of suspicious transactions, whatever they might be. Risk issues are supposed to be like that. All too often, firms do not do it. Some of them don't even have the discussion until the building burns down. And then what is the first question, anyone, when the building burns down? Anybody knows what the first question is?
Who did it?
Well, that's true.
Why you call 911?
That's true too. But I wasn't thinking about those two very important ones. Well, 911 and who did it? The building is already burnt down. So what do you think the next question is?
What will you do?
Oh, what happened?
True. Those two are true too. But what do you think the next question would be? Are we?
Insured?
Insured?
Yes. Should you wait until the building burns down and say, are we insured?
Okay.
But this is how a lot of times organizations manage their risk issues. They wait until something burns down, blows up, goes completely to hell, and somebody gets locked up in prison to find out, are we insured, quote unquote. All right. So that is an immediate lesson to think about. Don't wait until something happens to ask yourself, are we insured? Or are we the hell anything else for that matter? Okay. So how do we define risk? How do we define it? Does anybody know?
Something that needs to be prevented.
Yeah, something that needs to be prevented. Any other definitions? Only something that has to be prevented. That's it for risk?
No, that ain't it.
What else? What other definition can you come up with?
The likelihood of a negative or tragic situation.
Yeah, the likelihood
occurring.
of a negative or tragic outcome. That's a part of the definition of risk. And even in your notes, the page that we're on, notice it says risk is a combination of what? The probability of what? Two things. An event and it's what?
Consequences.
Consequences. So if a fire starts, that's the event. What's the consequences? Is it only that the building may have burnt down? No. Some people might have been in the building. Correct? So some people might get burnt up. Does it stop there? No. There might be some important information, data, files that gets burnt up too. So when you start thinking about risk in terms of event and consequences, those kinds of things alone should keep organizations vigilant about managing risk. But interestingly enough, a lot of organizations still don't manage risk as well as they should. Some of it is because of ignorance. Some of it is because of cheapness. They don't want to pay the cost. Some of it is because if they try to manage the risk correctly, then there are certain other hanky-panky risky things that they're doing that will be what? Discovered. And they don't want them discovered. Did you know that? Some organizations take risks and don't fix things because they don't want certain things to be discovered, especially if top management is hanky-panky. Because you know the worst kinds of laws that are broken, especially in financial services and other places like that, are at the top of organizations, not the bottom. Okay? So they take all kinds of risk and ignore all kinds of risk because they're doing some other risky stuff. How about that?
Can I have
So,
one of those?
yes. Go ahead, Altia.
Can I have an example of one of those hanky-panky risks at the top?
Oh, at the top? Oh, has anybody ever heard about WorldCom? Maybe not. But WorldCom was a multi-billion-dollar company. When I say multi-billion, I mean literally multi-billion-dollar company. All right. Many, many years ago, the top management of WorldCom decided that the billions of dollars in sales that were reflected in its sales ledger was not high enough for them to project in the returns that they wanted to show their shareholders and the public. So what did they do? They went ahead and told the chief financial officer to go into the sales ledger and add a few more billions in sales that never occurred. Is that getting warm?
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, very much so. Then, so that their balance sheet and income statement can look better, quote unquote, in their minds, instead of recording expenses as expenses, which they don't want the public to see or anybody else, because the expenses were in the billions of dollars, they recorded the expenses as assets. So the balance sheet could look stronger than it was supposed to look. How did that tickle your fancy at the top? And that kind of crap could only happen at the top. Cannot happen in the middle.
Yeah.
It cannot happen down the line. That kind of fraud can only occur at the top. And that's where it always occurs.
What was the case with Wells Fargo? What?
Well, what happened at Wells Fargo? Anybody knows?
You mean the bundle selling?
Right, fictitious accounts.
Yeah, fictitious accounts. No doubt that particular scheme started from the middle up.
Right.
Yeah. So again, senior people, once again. And the reason why senior people can get away with it, because they can do things in isolation. They can sit down and collude together and nobody knows until something blows. Because remember, the rest of us are busy what? Following the rules. But management and above, especially at the executive management level and above, sometimes they could what? Circumvent the rules. See my point? And therefore, this is why we have oftentimes have these scandals occurring at the top. We have scandals at the bottom too, but that's lunch money, school fees, buy one used car or something. But I'm talking about real serious money. Most of them, 95% or more, occur in the middle and mostly at the top. Okay? Cause and effect, event and consequences. All right? Something to think about. And it happens all the time. It's happening as we speak. God forbid when the next doggone situation will blow, like Wells Fargo and WorldCom and so on. There have been too many cases. If you go into Google and type in top 10 major failures in companies in the last 10 years, you'll be shocked. And if you do further research, you'll discover that the persons who are supposed to be mitigating this risk are the persons who perpetrated them further up the organization, unfortunately, because they're the ones we expect to do what? Protect the organization. Okay? So this risk thing is interesting. Some food for thought. All right. So by definition, consider risk to be the probability of an event and its consequences. What do we mean by probability? It may or may not happen. If you assume it won't happen and it does, and you're not covered in some form or protected, then we all know what the consequences are. If you cover and it never happens, all you've lost are a few bucks as a mitigation against major disaster. That's the point. Also, you need to know, I think somebody said earlier something about negative risk. Yes, but there is positive risk as well. Not all risk is negative. And I think somewhere before we're done, we'll see what some of those positive risks are. Okay. For example, if you look at the third point here in the safety field, we are told that, interesting, that consequences are only what? Negative. And where consequences are only negative, management focuses on what? Prevention and mitigation. But that's in the field of safety. And again, risk is not just all those things you mentioned earlier, but now we can actually put them into pockets and categories where risk is occurring in safety fields and not non-safety fields. Risk is occurring in financial institution and non-financial institution. Risk is occurring in the private sector and the public sector. Risk is occurring at the Vatican and in church in the Bahamas. So,
Personally.
all right.
I say personally, like he say COVID.
Yeah, and risk is occurring personally, like COVID. All right. So even though your bestest girl or your bestest friend or your bestest family member, your mom or whatever, you may want to like be close to them and hang out, you can't take that risk anymore right now. You have to take the necessary personal risk, because that risk can actually what? Kill you. Okay. Like so many other risks, by the way. All right. So how do we go about then managing this risk? Well, there are a couple of things we can do. First of all, organizations need to address the risk. First, you have to recognize what those risks are. You see how you guys threw out those different risks so well, and all of them were key risks. And you'll be surprised that many organizations who are not paying attention to some of them, believe it or not. Small, medium, and large organizations, many of them are not paying attention to many of those risk issues that you guys mentioned, when in fact, they ought to be paying attention to them. Many organizations have risk departments that are not paying attention to some of those things you threw out. Unbelievable. Okay, so it goes back to the first point. We have to address the risk. Okay, we have to find out what is good risk management. How are we going to treat our risk? These are all part of the risk management scheme. And this management needs to be continuous, not like when we feel like it or on occasion, or only when other persons in industry are doing it, or we'll implement it whenever we feel like getting to it at some future board meeting. No, this thing needs to be continuous. It needs to be implemented immediately. It needs to be something that is discussed at the board level, practically at every board level. But you'll be surprised to find that many risk issues are not discussed at the board level on a regular basis. And why do I say board level? Because the board is the ultimate responsibility for any organization, including all the organizations you guys work for. And if they're not contemplating these things regularly at that level, you can see why we have failures in many of these organizations. It's some food for thought. Okay? And then the last point talks about integrating risk management into the culture of the organization. And we all know what culture is all about. Most of us can't change who we are because we are part of our culture. You can beat us to death. We are already part of our culture. It is impossible to remove it. You could get us to fake it, threaten us with stuff, and we'll try and make some adjustments, but we cannot change who we are in our culture. And so if organizations make risk management a culture, then it becomes part of the what? Day to day. See that word TIFA? There's some Bahamians who don't know any other word other than TIFA. because that's a culture word, and that's the only one that they were taught or aware of. And to get them to change from TIFA to thief might be a big time problem for some Bahamians. It's not their fault. It's just that the culture didn't tell them the other word, depending on where they grew up. And that's unfortunately, yeah, how it is. All right. And so if you don't build risk management and risk issues into the culture, people are not going to act naturally. Because they're like, oh, let me get up today and think about risk. They're not, because it's not in their culture. It's not in the organizational culture. Interesting. Okay. And then by extension, if it's part of your culture, then risk management issue should be a policy, should be written down. Everybody should know about it who needs to know about it. And by all means, as I said in my final point, it should be led by home. Anyone knows?
The board.
Yeah.
The board.
The board of directors, whom we call the most senior management of the firm. Okay. Believe it or not, that is not happening in many organizations. Okay. All right. So let's look at some itsy bitsy risk issues since we've been bombarding ourselves with some of these heavy, generic, real life risk issues. Let's take a slight break and tone it down a little bit by looking at some other types of risk elements. The fact that I use the word tone it down doesn't mean that these elements are not serious elements, because these elements are in risk, that are any of them that are ignored, there are consequences for each and every one of them. That is what is amazing about these risk issues. All right. So let's start with the external risk factors. All right. If you look at your notes, you'll see we start with financial risks. And some of the things that fall under financial risks are interest rate risks, foreign exchange risks, and the well now known credit risks. So now you have a name you can call credit risk and interest rate risk and foreign exchange risk. It's called financial risks. Okay. And they are external because they occur where? Outside of the firm. Okay. Is anybody in this group not aware of any of those three risks? Okay, that's good. Because as professional planners, you need to know what they are and why they are risks. Okay. So if I mention any of these risks and you're like, well, I'm not sure what that is, please let it rip. Like, hello, what the hell is that one? All right. Does everybody know what foreign exchange is? Yes?
Sorry, Mr. Wilkinson, my mic tripping. I mean, it's giving me a hard time. Can you explain foreign exchange risks a bit for me, please?
Oh, foreign exchange. Well, first of all, when you hear foreign exchange, what comes to mind?
Purchasing of another currency.
Exactly, purchasing in another currency. Remember now that each currency in the world has its own rates. And so if you buy a currency on a particular day and the rate is down, and you buy it on another day and the rate is up, you can gain or lose on that exchange depending on whether the rate is up and down and by how much. Okay, which is why, for example, if a merchant in the Bahamas or the US, for example, decides to buy a product from Japan, because of foreign exchange potential gains and losses, especially losses, nobody minds gaining, but we don't want to lose. So what we do is we establish what we call a foreign exchange contract, and we lock in the rate so that even if the rate goes up or down, our deal is not affected by that, and nobody's better off or worse off. Okay, and so that's basically how foreign exchange works. Why is it a risk? Because you run the risk of engaging in a foreign exchange transaction on any particular day where you can actually lose money on the exchange depending on how low the rate is or how high the rate is in a particular country. And so those companies who do a lot of international business, they should have a foreign exchange desk that specializes in dealing with its foreign exchange transactions so that they can monitor the exchange rates in the key places around the world and to try to determine on a day-to-day basis whether their companies are being exposed to any foreign exchange risk. And if they are, to take steps like creating forward contracts and other contracts and derivatives, for example, to try to keep those losses to a minimum. Does that help a little bit?
It does.
Yeah.
In that case, can those same foreign exchange rates be manipulated somehow?
Of course. As a matter of fact, there's been some issues about manipulating foreign exchange rates in recent years and as recent as last year and this year. And so countries and companies are constantly trying to be alert. And that's part of the risk when dealing in foreign exchange, because they can actually be manipulated. There's a risk that you can end up suffering losses in the thousands and millions, depending on how large your transactions are. And countries know this, and other operators in foreign exchange know this. And remember, like cyber criminals, folks are always looking for ways to what? Get away with something, if they could. Okay, so that's a good question on the issue of financial risks, and it's one of those financial risks that are facing countries and companies every day. Some companies are successful in doing a pretty good job and they keep their losses to a minimum. Other companies and countries don't do such a great job and they end up losing significant amounts of money from time to time. Yeah? And I guess some people end up losing their jobs as well from time to time. All right. Then we have strategic risks, which has to do with competition and customer changes and industry changes and customer demand. Why are these strategic risks? Anybody know, like, aren't these just normal things? Why are they in risk? Why are they a risk? Why is competition a risk issue? Anyone?
Based on my competition, we may still have the same products. However, if they're actually offering something better, then I'm actually at risk of having to lose my clientele, which means I'm losing money.
Couldn't say it better myself. All right. That is a perfect explanation for the competition risk. And that's why.
Question.
Yes.
Would competition risk also be considered should you offer a specialized service and a product and for whatever reason that vantage point goes away, so now you can't easily adapt? Does that also come into play? Or that's more so customer changes?
Yeah, that will be more on the customer changes side, and depending on how it goes, maybe a little bit on the customer demand side as well. Because we know from experience that people's tastes change. You follow? And so once our tastes, what we like and don't like changes for whatever reason, or do and don't do, then of course demand will either go up or down. For example, look at what the pandemic has done right in the Bahamas. People who used to drink a lot of Starbucks, are they drinking the same amount?
No, sir.
No, they're drinking less Starbucks because they need to save their money to do something else. So the demand for Starbucks in the Bahamas, there's still some people who do it, but no doubt demand has gone what? Down. Those persons who like to go to the movie theater, well, COVID has caused movie theaters to close. And even if you were open, people are not going to go in and sit by because they don't want to catch anything, according to one of our other risk colleagues. All right. So the demand for movie theater stuff is going to go down. What do? Go in the room and watch Netflix until we feel comfortable enough to go into the movie theater. Okay. And so, yeah, all these kinds of things are what we call strategic risks that if we don't manage them well, can have a huge impact on the success or failure of a company. Recruitment, if you don't recruit the best talent, you're not going to get best production. If you have high turnover, that's a recruitment risk problem. Turnover is always a problem because it's expensive for companies, for people to leave. Then you have to bring somebody in and retrain them, and then somebody leaves and you have to retrain them. It's a very expensive exercise. And if your competition is stable, then their products and services will be more stable than yours. And then all of a sudden, customer demand changes from you to them. And as you can see, all of these things are individually risky and they have interconnecting risks as well. Okay? So suddenly recruitment affects customer demand and competition and customer changes just because you cannot keep your staffing and your production levels steady. All right. Supply chain risk. You have one supplier. What happens if something goes wrong? Dog eats your lunch. Remember the old expression, never put all your eggs where?
One basket.
One basket. I went to cash a check at Commonwealth Bank. It was a Commonwealth Bank check. The lady says to me, do you have a Commonwealth Bank account? I'm like, do I need to have one? She said, no, not really. She said, but if you don't have one, there's a slight problem. And I said, what is that problem? You can't cash the check? She said, no, I can cash the check. But because you don't have a Commonwealth Bank account, here's the penalty. She didn't use the word penalty. That's just my word I use to make this thing dramatic. She said, because you don't have a Commonwealth Bank account, you not only do you need one piece of identification, but you need what? Two. So my driver's license wasn't enough. Like, that didn't say enough about me. I needed another one that said the same thing.
Yes, sir.
How about that? Okay. But it didn't end there. And she said, and
You're gonna be charged 560.
Brother Stick, who said that? Altia, yeah, you know they can.
That's them teethers now. That's
Yeah,
them teethers now.
thank you, Richmond. That's them flicking teethers right now. No, it wasn't enough that I had to come up with two IDs with the same thing on it. But now they're gonna charge me $5.60 to cash their check, not even another bank's check. And I'm like, of course I knew she was serious, but I had to make it a little dramatic as well, just for the hell of it, for the record. I'm like, are you serious? She said, yes. I'm like, why? She says, I don't know. I said, I know you don't know. And she can't ask either, because they'll look at her like, have you lost your mind, Susan? You don't question our decision. Just implement, do it, and shut the hell up. Get the two IDs and the 560, and that's it. Customer doesn't like it, too bad. Okay. I hope I made that dramatic enough, because that was ridiculous. Teethus indeed. That's a terrible thing. So I mean, if Granny who's 70 or 80 comes in and she doesn't have an account there, dog eat her lunch. She's out $5.60. And I said to the teller, just to make it a little uncomfortable, so she could put in the suggestion box maybe. I said, do you know that $5.60 can buy 2 pounds of rice, 1 can of corned beef, and a box of macaroni that can last a family of 2 for 3 days or
Not in the
longer?
Bahamas. Not in the Bahamas.
Yes, it can. Here's why. I know people don't think so, because we always say it's expensive to live in the Bahamas. That's true. But here's what I mean. 2 pounds of rice costs about $1.80 something. Now we know when we put 1 cup of rice in the pot, it swells right up, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Or you guys don't cook anymore?
Yeah.
It does. 1 pot of rice can feed 2 people for 2 days or more, depending on how much you eat. That's the other thing. So you spend $1.80 for 2 pounds of rice. Corned beef costs what? Almost $2. So that's $4. If you put that corned beef in with potatoes and then the macaroni, which is 80 something cents, $1, then you're eating food until, especially if you don't eat a lot. If you eat a lot, you can eat for 3 days, Rithman. If you only eat like a normal person, you can eat until you faint. Like, I'm tired of this now, flicking corned beef. See what I mean? So when they take $5.60 from Grammy, they're doing her an I say all that to say yes, Tifa's, doggone it. All right. Why do regulators fall under risks? What the regulators? How do they get into the risk issue?
They are the people who implement these same rules but don't follow by them. The real thiefers on the top, the white collar ones.
Kiss my foot. Okay, you beginning to sound like me now. I dog on it, but yeah, that's on the one hand. Then on the other hand, we have the issue with the other group of regulators who are implementing the rules, and if you don't follow the rules, then they can what? Fine you, take your license, suspend your license, and ruin your reputation. So all these risks are there floating around. That's why when the guy said, you don't need to put that in your report to the central bank, I'm like, is this guy kidding me? Doesn't he realize what the implications are when the central bank sees that we're trying to circumvent their inquiry? They're regulators, monsieur. You can't do that. And don't ask me to do it. And then the guy threatened me. Do you know who pays your salary, Mr. Wilkinson? What the hell kind of threat is that? And imagine how devastating that was, because back then my children were little and I'm like, oh my God, here we go again. Job threatened for doing the job. Maybe you guys don't know anything about that. Maybe the 21st century has changed that now. And if that is so, I hope so, but I don't think so. Just that people are too afraid to confront the truth and the requirements. And that's why a lot of things don't get done. And that's why a lot of things don't get done properly, because people are afraid of the consequences, unfortunately, because you shouldn't have to be afraid. We're all supposed to be working on the same agenda, which is to make our organizations better, but it doesn't quite work that way. We talked about culture. If it's not in the culture, you run the risk of things going to hell. We talk about the board. If the board doesn't have the proper people sitting on it, you run the risk of not having the company managed properly. If there's no independent executive director that is required for financial institutions now, some of you might know and may not know, then it means that you don't have an independent person on that board who, when the board is going that way, can stop and say, stop, this is illegal, this is unethical, this is unacceptable, and if you flicking go ahead with it, I'll report you. Who has the nerve to do that on a board? But that's what the independent executive director is supposed to do. That's why the central bank implemented that every board in the Commonwealth has to have an INED, whether you're aware of it or not. Okay? And again, all of these are risk mitigators, because all these things we're talking about are directors of risk. And in each and every one of them, on this whole long list of stuff, there's risk embedded in them if we do not exercise and do the correct thing. Every single one. Okay? If you have customer demand issues, you have a risk of losing business and eventually closing down. Nobody wants to hear that. If you have competition risk issues, you need to find a way to become more competitive again, or you're going to be out of business. Major risk. All these things are risk issues. Okay? Even down to contracts and natural events. We know about natural events. Look at what Dorian did to us. Look at what COVID has done to the world. Correct, folks? Oh, I'm the only one in the room again. But yes.
Yes, sir.
You can see what I mean. All right. And then last but not least, environmental risk. Well, we've been talking about environmental risk all over the world. Even China that has fog from here to the next part of the world. Then they're talking about China is interested in the environment, when in fact they have more fog than everybody in the world combined almost. Interesting. Okay, maybe I'll leave China alone for the moment. Any questions on these external directors of risks? If you were not aware of many of them before, you're now aware. Some of these risks do not apply to the particular job that you're in or the environment that you're in, but for many others, they do. Things like supply chain risk and contract risks and hazard risks. These are all real, depending on what type of business you're in. Those people who work in coal mines, they have some major contract and hazard risk issues. All right. So again, these risks are everywhere, and they apply to who they apply to, and organizations would do well to try to find out where these risks lie and then take steps to deal with them. Okay. Those are the external risks. Now we have a whole long line of what? Internal bloody risks. So if you still don't get that risk is everywhere, then you are dead and you don't know it. Okay? They are everywhere. All right. So after that long list of external risks, now we have a long list of internal risks, like liquidity risk. What is liquidity risk, anyone? Liquidity risk.
That speaks to being able to, it means essentially paying your bills on time from
Yeah,
cash perspective.
having enough money to pay your bills on time. Not just pay your bills when you feel like it, you have to pay them on time. Because after a while, if you keep paying when you feel like it, they're still coming after you and say you're late too often. Why are you late? Then they discover you don't have enough money. Why? Because you're not managing your money. And then you wouldn't hire one of the certified financial professionals to help you manage your liquidity problems because you don't think you have a problem because you be like somebody on drugs. Like, I'm not drunk. I got this liquidity situation, yet every month you're paying late or not paying at all. Okay? Which rolls right into cash flow problems. If you have liquidity problems, generally you have cash flow problems. If you have research and development problems, it means that you're not coming up with new products, new vaccines. See that? This thing is tied right into COVID even. Imagine that. Who would have thought that when we discuss risk management for our certifications this year, we'd be talking about the importance of research and development with regards to a clear and present danger that we have with COVID.
If I did, they give them one.
Okay. What is intellectual capital, anyone? Anybody knows what intellectual capital is?
Intellectual capital is that that's any ideas or any developments that would have been done on site and on property, generally from your employees. So if a business created something, they don't want anything to be copywritten or whatever. It's like that, those type of risks.
Couldn't put it better myself. Okay, I hope the rest of you got that. It's all about the ideas coming from the employees while they're working in the organization. If you work for an organization, when you come up with great ideas, then oftentimes those ideas are the organization's ideas. If you come up with those ideas outside of the organization, then they're yours and you can do some other stuff. However it occurs, it's called intellectual property because it comes from your intellect, your mind. Okay. How we manage intellectual property will create risks of one kind or another. If we mismanage them, there are certain risks that will occur, the risk of losing or copying or not benefiting, whatever those risks might be. And again, all these, just like external risks, we have to be thinking about all these different types of internal risks and how they affect our organization. One by one, ask yourself at the board level, even at the senior management level, or the risk management level, because there should be somebody who heads a risk management department who's constantly looking at these things. Do any of these risks apply to us? If the answer is yes, how? If there's a how, what are we going to do to mitigate those risks? Okay. Do we have problems with accounting controls in here? Somebody mentioned something about those bloody managers checks. They are accounting controls. And if you don't manage them well, somebody's going to forge a signature and run off with a bunch of dough because of poor controls. If your information system, your IT system is not set up properly, you're not saving stuff on-site and off-site, and your security systems are weak, the cyber criminals are going to come and rip you up. And what is the risk? The risk that you can lose all your doggone information, all your client information, all your operational information. And if you don't, and if it's really bad, you're left with nothing. You have to start from scratch. And if you can't start from scratch, then you have to shut down. It's kind of deep when you start thinking about it deeply. We already talked about recruitment. That's an internal and external. Supply chain, same thing. What about public access? What's that? Anybody knows? Public access. Probably not. But basically, when we use the term public access, we're talking about how we allow data and other information to come in and out of our organizations, okay? And how we're going to control that data, whether it's cyber or manual, okay? There have to be controls in place. how do employees become an issue with risk? What kind of risk do employees present?
Theft,
Yeah, theft right off the top. Anything else you can think of?
intellectual capital, there's a lot of
Intellectual capital, yes. Employee turnover, that creates a big problem. Employees who run off with company information, you can't get it back.
Confidential, yeah.
Yes, confidential information, absolutely. Okay. So again, the list for internal risk issues are long. This is not exhaustive. This is just some of the really key hardcore ones that any risk management department or any organization should be thinking about to see what applies to them. Okay, for sure. Not to mention the last one, which is not the least one, products and services. If you're not managing those well, you end up with inferior products, customer demand fails, and all this kind of stuff. See that 2 pieces of ID and doggone 560? That means for certain customers, they're not even going to go back there if they don't have to. So you can lose business. Maybe not enough to put a dent in Commonwealth because, you know, they're pretty solid. But I'm just making the point that, you know.
I may interject, Mr. Wilkinson.
Yes.
Royal Bank does not take checks at all from customers. They don't cash anything if the person is not a customer of Royal Bank. At least they still do it with us.
Right. Scotiabank do the same. Scotiabank do the same thing. But the aim though is that even from that perspective, the aim is that you would want to deter people out of the branch who are just transactional, because that also poses a risk from an operational perspective, from an expense perspective, because now as a bank you have to pay tellers whatever the salary is to cash a check, whereas there's no return. Because again, from the banking perspective, the main source of revenue is primarily interest driven.
Yes.
While there are some non-interest revenue, but it's primarily interest driven. So if you want a person to come in the bank just to cash a check and you're a non-account holder, hey, you could go to your bank where you have an account and just deposit wait for it to clear.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That's an option.
Yeah, that's kind of where everybody's being driven to.
Digital.
Yeah, so we have 3 different scenarios. Isn't that interesting? We have the Scotia scenario where it's cost effective to go to your ATM just outside the door. And if it's not a Scotia thing, get the hell and go to wherever you can.
I ain't say that. These are recorded for quality assurance. I ain't say that.
I show that there for drama. Okay. I know that I make sure to say drama so if anybody tries as, dude, it was for drama. So yeah. So it's cost effective to do that. And then at Commonwealth Bank, hey, it's not our, but it's our check, but since you don't have an account with us, because they want you to open an account. See, that's really what they want you to do. If you open an account, so they have the little marketing thing going the other way. If you open an account, we won't require any ID or one, and there's no 560, but you have to open an account. I get that because they want you to save with them and bank with them. I get that. The penalty for not doing that is that. And then at Royal, they're not taking it at all. I wonder what Royal's reason is.
Same thing.
Is
Royal reason the Scotia reason or the Commonwealth reason?
I think all is the same reason. Commonwealth Bank just ain't get to the point where they stop taking checks. Scotia ain't stop us yet.
Royal is similar to Scotia, as he mentioned, but only reason I'm assuming, well, Commonwealth hasn't done it yet. They are a Bahamian bank, so I don't know how much they can turn away the Bahamians, but
yeah, like everything else, they're gonna do it later. Much later.
No, they ain't like BOB. Commonwealth Bank is revenue driven. So it ain't long before they transition. They probably need to beef up their digital products. But eventually that's coming. It's only gonna be BOB essentially.
Yeah, and we need BOB to stay like that for a little while because they need to go into Abaco and they need to go into Island. They need to go into Chubkey and all that crap where there's no real return on investment.
Every island.
Yeah, so they need to kind of stay out of that other bank thing because we need them to be able to take some licks here and there. All we need them to do is give better loans. That's all. And then
why they're losing. They're giving loans to the people who don't qualify.
I
Listen.
know.
So, anyway, let me leave that alone. Sorry, sir.
Right, right.
No, I'm not leaving it alone. You could leave it alone. I'm not flicking leaving it alone.
I forget this recorded. I forget this is in a clear conversation. Sorry, sir.
That's okay. I could say it. Let them sue me. Look, we all know that in the last 3 years or so, the bank gave out $500 million in loans, which they'll never get back. Now, the majority of them have been transferred to what? Something. Resolve. What a hell of a name. Resolve suggests by the name that they're going to fix it. It'll never be fixed because they'll never collect the majority of that bloody $500 million. Where did that $500 million go?
Free money? But that's politics. That's politics money, though. That's most of it is politics.
I know. In the pockets of politicians as usual. Let them sue me. Unfortunately, and they don't have the decency to get like 100 million, which stinks. It's 500 flicking million, which is $500 million. You know how many legitimate loans poor people and in between people and other people and business people could have gotten with that money to create real productivity and minimum or lesser risk of credit loss?
That's a credit risk. That's a credit risk there.
That is a bloody tragedy.
That's the Bohemian fear.
And nobody
the
went
word
to
for the night is Tifus. Them Tifus.
Yes, and nobody went to prison. And if any one of us go in the Super Value tomorrow and thief a load of bro for bread, they will arraign us in court Saturday morning, even though there's no court open.
Curfew.
Okay? That's my point. It's a tragedy, and nobody's talking about it. I'm talking about $500 million. Where the hell did it go? Nobody's come back to say where the hell it went. Who got the money? We don't even know who the borrowers are. Sorry, that's another Bahamian word for borrowers. We don't know who the borrowing thiefers are.
Yeah, man, the list get leaked out. The list get leaked out.
I need
Some of them.
Well, you guys have my email. Send it to my email. I'd love to see that bloody list. Doggone it. All right. But these are all risk management issues, correct? In fact, these are real life hardcore cost. You know what we could have done with that $500 million, students and professionals? Think about it. It stinks. Right. Let me just take the next few moments to talk about the steps to see that stinks. Did I say that loud? Yeah, okay, fine. Because you know why it stinks? When I have a little credit card balance of $2,000 and I don't pay on time, somebody calls me. Mr. Wilkinson, you know your credit card is in arrears, eh? And I'm like, is this Rithman? I said, who is Rithman? This is not Rithman.
No, I was in collection some time ago. Not no more. I don't go no more.
I'm just teasing because the banker people from that other place calling you. And so I'm teasing that system like Bahamians can't answer a phone. Give me an answer. We can't answer a phone.
But again, is it worth the cost? We know that the cost of doing business. I mean,
I know.
That's what it is.
I know. But after making money in the Bahamas from 1906, like, why should we be worrying about a few pennies here and there? But then that's me. Okay. Doggone it. From 1906 to 9, how much money is that? It's a lot.
$500 million.
Much more than that. Because when I was a young banker, decades and decades and decades ago, each branch was making $5 million then. And that was only like decades and decades ago. That was in the 50 years before that, whatever. It's some food for thought. So I'm thinking, if you've made all that money, then what are you splitting hairs on a few bucks to give folks a minimum wage to answer the phone? Because that's all you have to pay for them to answer the phone. A lot of people take minimum wage to answer the phone in the Bahamas. Even me, when I retire and I don't want any headache, I say, I'll take minimum wage. I just want to be busy. See, like that. All right. So, but yeah, some real heavy food for thought. when you start thinking about the real hardcore, real life risk management issues, it does make you wonder. All right. So what are the steps then? If you're responsible for risk management, if you're thinking about it, if you're heading a department, if you're a company's board, your CEO, top management, whoever you are, what are some of the things we should always be thinking about with regards to our company's risk? Well, first of all, we have to know that every organization has a certain level of risk. We need to find out what they are. What are the objectives from a strategic perspective, a long-term perspective that the company is going to take in order to manage this risk? Because remember, those companies who don't manage the risk, if it's not sooner, it'll be later. But there will be consequences. Remember that definition I showed you earlier in your notes? It's about the probability of what? An event and its, yeah, all right. And remember what probabilities are all about. They're little numbers that may or may not happen. And if they don't happen, fine. But when they do, dog eat your lunch. So much so that some organizations never recover. Like WorldCom, multi-billion-dollar company. They discovered that the company had so much fraudulent activity and they had assets listed on the balance sheet that didn't exist in the billions. They had liabilities that weren't even recorded, unknown even to shareholders, and all this nonsense, which brought about their collapse. At some point, they discovered that they could not pay those billions back, and the whole company collapsed. Those persons who were putting aside their pensions for 40 years went down the drain. Many of them committed suicide. That's what we mean when we talk about risk issues. Many executives committed suicide. Many employees committed suicide because they lost their entire life savings. That's what happens when we play around with risk issues and run these crazy, unethical agendas. Okay. So that's what we mean by strategic objectives within the organization. We have to make sure we assess our risk properly. Then we have to identify them and analyze them. Know what they are. If you're not sure 100%, estimate them and then evaluate them. That's what this list is all about. And any company worth its green should have a department or an individual or some such area that's always looking at these things and reporting them, and always looking at threats and opportunities where the company can be better, and also try to mitigate against any risk that could potentially harm them, their continued ability to do business, and not to mention their reputation. Some serious stuff, actually, when you start messing with that, okay? And so how do we summarize it? Decision, treatment, reporting, and monitoring. That's a summary of all that other crap that we just saw, which we're going to still go back to next time we meet, because we're going to look at most of those key areas and say, how do we assess it? How do we evaluate it? And so on. How do we identify it? But before we get to that, just know decisions have to be made about its management. Decisions have to be made how we're going to treat risk, how are we going to report it, and how are we going to monitor it. And why is it that monitoring is there? Monitoring is there because risks never come to an end. Whenever you fix one, another one shows up. Whenever you fix that, another one shows up. You never get finished dealing with risks because they keep showing up. And so you have to constantly be monitoring your existing risk and looking for any new potential risk that maybe you can mitigate even before it becomes a problem for your organization. You can see why those of us who are busy in our normal day-to-day work, why we wouldn't be thinking about this crap like, I'm too busy in my own doggone problems. That's why firms need to have somebody or some department who's dealing exclusively with these risk issues. Okay? Seriously, all right? So my final note for this evening, because I know I've been experimenting again, for this evening is when we come next week, we're going to look at some of these elements that we talked about in terms of how do we assess the risk, how do we analyze it, how do we evaluate our risk within our organizations so that we can at least, even if we're not directly responsible for them, whatever jobs we're doing, whenever we see any signs of risk issues, we can maybe report it to somebody. Because remember, it's not enough to say that's not my job. Because even though it's not your job, if you don't report certain risk issues that you might see, they might come back and harm what? Everybody, including you. And part of the training and meetings the company should have with staff should be about these kinds of things. So everybody is on the same page. As I said in the very first page, we must all have the same language and the same terminology and the same expressions so that everybody knows that when they see certain things happening, even if it's not their job directly, they have a responsibility to report it and seek to have the risk resolved or at least mitigated. Okay. All right. I'm going to stop there. You guys have been fantastic. If there are no questions at the moment, we'll break at this point, but certainly go ahead and read through those notes when we come back. We're going to pick up this discussion about risk management. There's a lot more to say before we are done. I also have a nice little, well, I think it's nice, video that I'll share with you that talks about a lot of these things that we're talking about. But you know, they add a little bit here, take a little bit there, gives you another perspective, but it's pretty much the same information. All right, any questions? Wonderful. If you think of anything while you're reading and reviewing and you want to raise a question, feel free to send me an email or a text and I'll be happy to respond. Okay?
All right. Good night.
Okay, wonderful. Did anybody join us since our last group? No, it looks like our original group. In that case, please do not catch any COVID before my next class. Get back in one piece and I'll see you next week, Thursday, same time.
All right. Take care.
Awesome.
Yeah, good night.
Okay, good night.
Good night. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.